Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Ranked where I climb the online series 10 ladder and provide live commentary as I go. 2 days ago, I went up against a really interesting high-ranked player who had a team featuring Pokemon like Shedinja, Guzzlord, and Substitute Heatran. I got absolutely destroyed by that player, and right after that game, I was like, I really want to try out this team. Didn't think I'd find it online, but it actually turns out that that player posted this team right after we battled. So talk about a coincidence. They actually had peaked at rank number 5 on the ladder with this team, and I think they might have reached that right after our match. So first of all, huge shoutouts and congratulations to them. This was built by a Japanese player called Akiakaba. I've linked their Twitter down in the description below, as well as a paste courtesy of them and rental, of course. And it is a very interesting way to play in Series 10. You know, first of all, there's so many cool sets on this team. You know, the Shedinja and the Heatran was what I really struggled against the other day. So every single set on this team I think is fairly interesting, so I do want to talk about it a little bit because there's a lot of anti-meta stuff on this team that's really fun. But yeah, the creator is a top-tier Japanese player, got top 8 at Japanese Nationals, I think in 2019, and played at the World Championships that year. And like I say, got to number 5 on the ladder with this team. So first of all, huge shout-outs to them. This team basically is really interesting because it's not like there's anything that's a super strong sweeper outside of Groudon and Whimsicott actually. But at the end of the day, like, you have a lot of bulk on this team. Zapdos, Heatran, and Guzzlord and Shedinja are basically not going to be one-shotting things, but they're going to stay out on the field for a long time. And so, you know, Groudon's your restricted Pokemon here, and synergizes really nicely with a lot of the Pokemon that are on this team. Groudon plus Heatran's a really fun combination. When I played against this player, they led Groudon Heatran. I just had no answers into it. I really struggled into it. And so it's classic White Herb Groudon. You don't really need to set up Swords Dance with this one, and it just has, you know, classic moves in Precipice Blades, Heat Crush, Rock Tomb, and Protect. Heatran's a really cool Pokemon. This was something that was really, you know, sub-Heatran was really common back in like 2012, 2013, but it is not nearly as common anymore, just not really in the format as much, but Heatran's nice, right? It does match up really well into certain restricted Pokemon, and Substitute completely changes how you can play with it, because Heatran is one of those Pokemon that really, you know, doesn't like going up against super effective hits, but if you can get that sub up before your opponent can threaten you with super effective damage, and then you have a free turn with Heatran, it just threatens with so much damage, and so it's Flamethrower, Earth Power, Sub Protect. It's actually Chopo Berry rather than Shucka. That makes sense here. I think this team has a fair amount of answers into things that are typically ground type Pokemon to use, you know, those ground type attacks. Chopo is going to be really essential against Zacian for, you know, close combat, Mienshao close combat, and Urshifu close combat, for example. So it just ensures that you can survive those really powerful hits and last a little bit longer. I also have to talk about the Whimsicott here because it's actually Chlorophyll. When I even went up against this team and first even saw this paste, I didn't even realize that it was Chlorophyll. It's so interesting because it enables Whimsicott to actually being a really cool sweeper when you pair it with Groudon. Most players don't really use Whimsicott offensively, but this is Life Orb Whimsicott with Moonblast and Grass Knot. Yeah, Whimsicott's already pretty fast anyway, and so with Encore, like, you don't necessarily need that Prankster, and there's no Tailwind on this Whimsicott, there's actually Protect instead. So Whimsicott's not going to come out that frequently because it's one of those Pokemon that are super frail, will just go down to one super effective hit, but in the right matchup, it can come out and just completely demolish your opponent. Grass Knot in particular is really valuable against opposing Groudons and Kyogres as well, so that's really cool. Zapdos here is Safety Goggles, that's pretty common. Discharge, Weather Ball, Volt Switch, and Protect. Discharge is really valuable on this team because you have Shedinja and Groudon, so like you can use it a lot easier for basically no punishment. Using Discharge when you have Guzzlord or Whimsicott on the field are also fine, mainly Guzzlord. Like, Guzzlord doesn't really mind being parried because it just doesn't do much damage. It's really there to kind of just disrupt, right? And so, yeah, you've got the Discharge that with each single turn can paralyze your opponent, giving you some cool way of speed control. Weather Ball is really nice just to snipe down things that don't expect to get KO'd immediately. Volt Switch is nice for pivoting, which is really important for a team like this because you can pivot, Volt Switch, and then go into Shedinja to take a hit. And finally, I have to talk about the 2 stars of the team. Yeah, everything actually is really strong on this team, but of course Shedinja and Guzzlord are so interesting because you don't see it very frequently. So Shedinja is a pretty straightforward Pokemon in Series 10 where it often just creates an endgame position where your opponent can't beat you, right? If you look at the most common restricted Pokemon, Kyogre, Xerneas, Zacian, and Calyrex Shadow Rider, Shedinja actually will have a favorable matchup against all of those. Calyrex can obviously hit it for super effective damage, but Shadow Sneak is probably a 2-hit KO onto the Calyrex unless they're like, I don't know, absurdly bulky or have like a Ghost Resist berry. And so with that, you can actually win 1v1 against any of the restricted Pokemon, which is really cool. So often what you want to do is enable yourself to set up and be in a position where your opponent, like, you just beat Shedinja's counters. Typically there's only going to be like 1 or 2 things that can hit it for super effective damage reliably, and then just use Shedinja to win the end game. when I played against this opponent and this team, I was expecting Ally Switch on Shedinja. That's one of the most common attacks on this Pokemon, but this Shedinja doesn't even run it, and so it's fun because it creates so many mind games where your opponents will often expect it, but you often won't even, you don't even have the chance to bait it out, right? Like, or to use it. When you have Ally Switch on a Pokemon, it creates so many mind games, right? Where like you have to think about whether or not you want to click it. But with the Shedinja, it's very straightforward. You don't have Ally Switch as an option, but your opponents often are going to expect it. So it just adds another level of mind games that's just so much harder to play around. And finally, Guzzlord. Guzzlord's really interesting because it is a very defensive Pokemon. Now, it's typically struggled in previous VGC formats, especially in Dynamax formats, where it's not a good Dynamax option and it struggles against Fairy-type Pokemon like Feeny, for example. But Fairy-types aren't as prevalent. Yeah, you do have Xerneas, but this team has a lot of good Xerneas answers. And so you don't have to be as afraid using Guzzlord, because there actually aren't that many things that can one-shot it, even though, Dark Dragon does get hit by super effective by a lot. It just has so much bulk. So this thing's really designed to just stay on the field and disrupt for a while. Wide Guard's really valuable. This in itself is actually a really nice Calyrex Shadow Rider counter, because Calyrex can't do very much to you. You can counter it with Wide Guard, and then knockoff is still just going to be a KO onto it. So Guzzlord's not doing much damage, but it's basically going to stay on the field, disrupt your opponent by, snarling and going for knockoff. So yeah, I know I spent a little bit longer talking about this team, but it is just such an interesting team, and I think it plays out very differently from most teams in Series 10. You have the Shedinja win condition, you have the win condition of just like sweeping with Groudon in the end game or Whimsicott in the end game, and so many games often are just going to be kind of long and drawn out, but you kind of just like out pressure your opponent where they have to respect the Shedinja, but they don't. So I think it's a really interesting comp, and I am really excited to just dive into it. So let's get started. Thanks so much as always for watching. If you enjoy, please share your support by leaving a like. Check out the creator, and question of the day, with us using Shedinja, I kind of want to know, if you could create a new ability, what would it be? I think I would probably say Special Intimidate. That's a very boring answer, but it's one that I've always wanted to see. So let me know your answers, and let's get started. Alright, very first game of the day, and it's up against Calyrex Shadow Rider. Pretty standard stuff for the most part, but there is the Naganadel, which we had featured on the channel just a couple of days ago. So I actually think this is an amazing matchup for Guzzlord, which I never thought I'd be saying. We probably don't really... Zapdos does have Weather Ball, which is pretty intriguing. But if they don't... Well, okay, they have some Shedinja answers. But generally, like, we don't even have Tail in the Whimsicott, right? So I'm thinking Guzzlord, Heatran, Groudon, Shedinja as our core. They're going to outpace us, but that's fine. Whimsicott's really the thing we want to deal with sooner than later. I mean, Zapdos does have Discharge and Weather Ball. Like, we could go Zapdos plus Groudon early on. But because of the lack of Ghost Resists, what I'm primarily scared of is going to be their Calyrex Shadow Rider plus Whimsicott. I think that's probably, yeah, just the scariest lead. So I'm thinking we go Whimsicott plus Groudon, and then Shedinja plus Guzzlord in the back. Now, Calyrex is probably one of the restricteds you don't like seeing as much, just because it actually has a way to hit Shedinja, right? Kyogre, Xerneas, Zacian all can't touch the Shedinja, whereas Calyrex obviously can hit it for super effective damage. Maybe I could have just led Shedinja, honestly, and just double Shadow Sneaked it as well. That was certainly a possibility. But Groudon and Heatran is pretty strong into this, I would say. And it's going to be Whimsicott plus Entei. Okay, so smart lead by them, going for that Entei immediately, but I'm okay with that as well, because that is one of the primary Shedinja answers on my opponent's team. Scary thing here is obviously they can burn with Sacred Fire onto Groudon. Turn 1, it's pretty safe to maybe go for a Protect and like a Heat Wave. But we do potentially threaten a double knockout here immediately. Entei, of course, could go for a Ground type attack as well onto Heatran, but I don't think it should one-shot us. I'm fairly confident we'd survive a Sacred Fire here on the Groudon. So, truth be told, I kind of want to just go for a Flamethrower here onto the Whimsicott and a Precipice Blades. Because Heatran does get ground type attacks, I am a little bit nervous about protecting Groudon, just for Heatran to take a lot of damage. Okay. Yeah, I'm willing to just Flamethrower and Precipice Blades here. Like I say, it is a potential double knockout immediately. And they go for Taunt, that's fine. Preventing a substitute. This means they don't get Tailwind up. Don't really think that's super important. They're just going to launch Sacred Fire here into Groudon. We take that super well. Unfortunately, though, we do get burnt. Okay. Here's Precipice Blades. Okay, even without the burn, we weren't knocking out Entei, so I guess I don't feel that bad about it. The main thing here is now we've eliminated Whimsicott, meaning that the biggest threat to the Guzzlord is actually out of the way. And Guzzlord's going to be quite nice for us here against Calyrex Shadow Rider. So the next turn I'll probably want to just protect... Oh, I can't protect Heatran at this point. So they're going to bring in Calyrex. Probably just Astral Barrage. Okay. Astral Barrage and what is the question? Does Entei have a ground type attack is the other main question I have here. I don't mind just going for a Flamethrower here onto Calyrex, and I'll go for Precipice Blades here. Yeah, if the burn didn't happen, Entei might actually be in Shadow Sneak KO range, but with Sacred Fire, obviously, it's basically a coin flip. It's a little bit in your favor, or my favor, because they can miss Sacred Fire, but, you know, should be counting on it burning. So, could have protected Groudon turn 1, and then bred in a double KO turn 2, with Earth Power and Precipice Blades. Well, like I said, I was worried about Entei having a ground type attack like Stomping Tantrum into Heatran, so I wanted to cover for that. Interesting, they actually opt for E-Speed. Okay, so expecting to get knocked out. And Astral Barrage. That's fine by me. I mean, Flamethrower does a ton here. I guess they just don't have a stronger offensive option than Extreme Speed there. Kind of surprised by that, but I'll gladly take that because now Shedinja can come out. And Shedinja plus Guzzlord actually looks really nice for us in this endgame. Okay, so we'll get another Sun-boosted Flamethrower off into the Calyrex. That is definitely in KO range from a Shadow Sneak now. Shedinja gets to come out. And I think Shadow Sneak here is super duper obvious, so I almost want to protect Shedinja and Earth Power. That effectively may just win us the game. It's also pretty safe, honestly, to just Earth Power and Shadow Sneak here because they're relying on a double protect. And Guzzlord actually does pretty well into this endgame, especially with max defense and special defense. But I think I'm willing to go for the protect here. Because, I don't know, if I were my opponent, I would definitely try to go for at least one protect with Calyrex. But even if they KO Heatran, like, I just get a free switch it into Guzzlord, and I can just go for Shadow Sneak and attack the Entei with Guzzlord. And having Focus Sash is really important as well as the protect here. But if they end up protecting the Calyrex and trying to snipe off the... Like, the main thing we want to avoid here is Sacred Fire Burn as well, right? So what I can do here is, yeah, get an Earth Power off. Even if that doesn't KO Entei, that's okay. I actually didn't account for Sacred Fire burning. They do protect, so yeah, that's good. Because if it does burn, that could actually really pose some issues for us. Question is whether or not they go for a double protect this next turn. Yep, so there's Sacred Fire into Shedinja. Wait, what? I guess they misclicked there. That's the only explanation I have. And they're not a Cell Vested, I guess. Okay. That may just win us the game. Yeah, maybe they timed out on the Entei, or they misclicked. Either way, I was expecting Sacred Fire into the Shedinja there, right? So Rillaboom comes out as their last one. Now the beautiful thing is you can't fake out into Shedinja, so Shadow Sneak would just KO. Guzzlord was actually amazing in this matchup, but we didn't even need to bring it out, surprisingly, which I'll take. Now the key thing is my opponent's win con is if you would need a triple protect with Calyrex because you can't fake out Shedinja right now. I'm obviously just going to Flamethrower Rillaboom here. Actually, Sub could be appropriate in this position, but there's 2 turns of Sunlight left. I actually kind of like subbing here, because I'm not sure Heat Wave or Flamethrower is going to KO anyway, because the AV is probably on the Rillaboom, given that Entei didn't have it. What was Entei's item, then? No, but if Flamethrower does... I think Flamethrower is fine here. Yeah, I'll just Flamethrower and Shadow Sneak. They need to go for a double, I guess, but they don't opt for it. Okay, nice. So the cool thing here is that we didn't even really use Shedinja for the immunities, but just that priority Shadow Sneak in itself was pretty nice. The key thing here is that my opponent never just had like that much offense to threaten us. It is going to be knockoff here, is going to go into the Shedinja, and so you get to see the interesting interaction between Focus Sash and knockoff. It doesn't knock the Focus Sash off. You actually survive anyway. So they needed a triple protect, essentially, to have a chance of winning this one. And Heatran just did so much damage across the board in this game. I think what makes this tricky is that, yeah, with Heatran, like, your best ways of dealing damage into it are, I don't know, like, ground-type attacks, fighting-type attacks, water-type attacks. I mean, just anything super effective. This Shedinja doesn't even have Ally Switch, but you may remember when I played against this team, I was so nervous about Ally Switch every single turn. So we were able to take advantage of not having it. And, you know, it just creates a lot more mind games. And actually, that was probably what my opponent was predicting. Sorry, yeah, the turn that they went Sacred Fire into Heatran, they were probably reading into Ally Switch that turn, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, not a misclick there. So, AV Rillaboom, Sea Incense Urshifu, pretty classic stuff. Citrus Entei, okay, that's really interesting. So they did have Stone Edge there. They could have gone for Stone Edge rather than E-Speed, but I'm pretty sure Heatran would have survived the Stone Edge anyway, unless they crit. Life Orb on Calyrex, pretty standard stuff here. and then Focus Sash on Naganadel. Naganadel is actually one thing I was pretty nervous about seeing there, just because it did have a way to deal with the Guzzlord. But you can see if Whimsicott's out of the way, their best ways to deal damage with Guzzlord are close combat from Urshifu and the Draco Meteor from Naganadel. So that's why I wanted to eliminate Whimsicott early on in the game. So yeah. Overall, what's interesting about this team is like it doesn't have that much offense, but Heatran in the Sun does a lot, and my opponent's team is relatively frail here. And so, yeah, if we're up against bulkier teams, we're not normally picking up one-hit KOs like we did in that match. But yeah, you see how strong Flamethrower in the Sun is, right? Able to just knock out that Rillaboom, even with the Assault Vest. So yeah. Really, really fun first game here, and it shows you the mind games that Shedinja causes, and that's the beautiful thing about this Shedinja. It doesn't even have Ally Switch, so you're never going to get baited into, like, playing Ally Switch kind of mind game war, and you just, you know, often your opponents will try to read really heavily into it, and that's one of the toughest things about Shedinja. So, yeah, I think this team does have the advantage of your opponent not knowing whether or not there's Ally Switch, and once this team becomes public, or more people find out about it, then it makes the mind game obviously a little bit easier to play around, because knowing your opponent doesn't have Ally Switch means you can play with 100% confidence. So, if you wanted to be really cheeky, you could always, like, take the team and just modify the Shedinja and add Ally Switch over, like, Skitter Smack, and that would be a really, it'd be really, really tough to go up against, but yeah. Either way, let's look for another game here. Alright, next match of the day, and it's up against Kyogre. So, as always when I play with this team, the first thing I'm asking is where are the Shedinja answers? They have a decent amount, depends if they have a dark type attack on Tsareena, but Tornadus, Volcarona, Celesteela, all likely. Snarl with Guzzlord and Wide Guard is really sweet for us here, so I like that a lot. Discharge is also really cool here. I don't think I really want to bring Heatran. And since Whimsicott doesn't have Tailwind, it does have Grass Knot, which is kind of cool, but it does also get walled by Celesteela and Tornadus. So it's probably Zapdos, Shedinja, Groudon, and Guzzlord. I think I like leading Guzzlord here. Snarl is just really disruptive to their overall strategy. Okay, I'm down for Zapdos plus Guzzlord, and then Groudon, Shedinja in the back. Playing against the Weather War here should be pretty interesting. Heatran just doesn't fare super well into a Kyogre matchup. It's funny, if they actually didn't have Kyogre, Heatran would be the win condition, but Kyogre just completely invalidates Heatran because not only does it reduce your damage output, but it also means that, like, anytime Kyogre switches in when Heatran's out already on the field, you're in a really awkward position. So it's, you know, not that often that you see one Pokemon completely invalidate, like, the option of bringing something, but this is one in which, like, Heatran just, like, really thrives in the sun, and it just does no damage if the rain is up, and it also basically forces me to switch it out. Like, yeah, I could stay in substitute, but if Heatran's not doing damage, there's not much point on having it out on the field. So, yeah. If that Kyogre were something else like a Xerneas or a Calyrex or, you know, whatever, you can make a very good argument for Heatran, but here it just doesn't make too much sense, and I think the other options are just stronger. So it's going to be Tornadus plus the Celesteela. Okay. The fun thing here is that no one ever sees Discharge coming. But I think I do have to respect it being Meteor Beam Celesteela, so turn 1 to play I lean towards is just going for a Snarl and a Protect to bait out a potential Meteor Beam. Even if it's not Meteor Beam and it's like Leech Seed leftovers, whatever, I don't really mind that. But I think on turn 1, there's no reason to just risk it immediately and take a ton of damage on Zapdos. Like, if I knew it weren't Meteor Beam power, I'd probably just switch Guzzlord out into Groudon and click Discharge, but without that knowledge, it's not worth going for. But Guzzlord's going to be so critical for us in this matchup. Kind of sad I didn't get to bring it on the last one, but now we get to play with it. And the main reason is just because it's so bulky. Snarl is so disruptive to my opponent's team, which is primarily oriented around special attackers. Could be physical Celesteela, but even if it is, it's not that scary. And Guzzlord obviously resists water-type attacks as well. So it's a really interesting pick into a lot of common meta options. And we've been, you know, got into favorable matchups like Nosashians, for example. That's where Guzzlord's going to thrive a little bit more. So they're going to go for the Icy Wind to start. That makes sense. You don't need to Tailwind here. The one scary thing about Icy Wind, it's actually a lot of damage. I'm going to guess their Life Orb, given that. Yeah, okay. And Heavy Slam. So I was just talking about Physical Steel, and there it is. But that does nothing to Guzzlord, so that's fine. Still wonder if there's a Meteor Beam there, though. It doesn't confirm anything for me. I am really nervous about Meteor Beam, because... Oh, okay. It's leftovers, good. Okay, so we get to confirm that. That means the Celesteela does not put on offensive pressure off against Zapdos. So I could switch this out into Groudon and then Discharge, but the scary thing is then I would knock out Tornadus and give my opponent a free switch into that Kyogre. Not really sure I want to do that right now. This positioning isn't really that bad for us at the moment. And we have the Citrus Berry and we Snarl Tornadus, so it's not that scary. So I'm down to Snarl and just Volt Switch here because that gives me a free switch in. Actually, instead of Snarling, I think I like Knock Off here onto Celesteela. Just get rid of that Citrus Berry. Or sorry, not Citrus, Leftover, so it can't heal anymore. Tornadus switches out. Okay. Into Tsareena. Okay, so that's probably going to try to position for a triple axle. Important speed tier information there. It's huge damage from Volt Switch, by the way. We now know that even with the Icy Wind, we outspeed Celesteela. It's not super surprising, but good to confirm that. I do feel forced to bring in Shedinja first, because I don't want to risk... if I bring in Groudon, then they can position Kyogre in relatively easily, but I'm not sure that was actually the correct call. We actually dodge a Leech Seed, which is pretty fortunate. Now they're really struggling because they don't get any recovery, so obviously a fortunate turn for us there. I mean, normally you're Heavy Slam, Leech Seed, Flamethrower, and Protect, so there is a chance my opponent can double up onto Shedinja for super effective damage. So the play I like here is to just Scout, Protect, and switch Shedinja back out into Zapdos. I think one thing that this team just make, like, playing it is so difficult is because Shedinja can always switch in, and so you, it's so hard to make plays safely while also covering for a Shedinja switch in at any given point. The other play I was contemplating here was Protect and Will-O-Wisp. But at this point, you have to remember that Shedinja is a win condition in itself against the Kyogre. My opponent actually just forfeits. Okay. We take those. I mean, that game was very far from over, but I guess they might have just not wanted to deal with it. And there is a chance that they just actually don't have damage into Shedinja on Tsareena or the Celesteela. So that would be another explanation. But yeah, that game was, definitely not over by any means, but I liked our position a lot. Like, the Celesteela didn't threaten us at all. With that next turn, like, it's unless you predicted the Zapdos switch in, which is so hard, you'd have to like be Leech Seeding a Shedinja and triple axling it potentially. Zapdos comes in for free, then I can just Volt Switch into the Celesteela slot. Triple Axle from Tsareena is scary into Guzzlord, but it's certainly not going to KO us. And once again, Shedinja in itself is a late game win condition where if we eliminate we scout out for any super effective attacks. Obviously, we know Tornadus is going to have something, but Tornadus is basically one hit away from getting KO'd. If Tsareena doesn't have a dark type attack and Celesteela is down, then the game was actually very difficult to win. So yeah, my opponent might have just realized they had no Shedinja answers there and forfeited. But either way, you can see how pivotal Shedinja is to this team composition. Guzzlord was a very safe lead for us in that last match as well, so I felt pretty confident with it in the early game. Snarl was just good disruption. We confirmed the Celesteela slet, and yeah, we got a little bit lucky with that Leech Seed dodge for sure, and that might have lended to the forfeit as well. But either way, you can see how well composed this team is, and it plays very differently from I think most of the teams I've used on Road to Ranked in Series 10 so far. So it's definitely cool to just play a very different play style and use some Pokemon that we haven't featured at all in this format in Shedinja and Guzzlord. So let's just look for the next one. Third game of the day, and it's going to be up against Ho-Oh. This is a really cool team, and in fact, this actually might be one of the worst matchups for us. We don't have like super consistent damage in a Ho-Oh, which can heal back consistently. And obviously, Ho-Oh is one of the best restrictors you can have against Shedinja because you can just one-shot it with Sacred Fire if you get that burn. So yeah, I think matchup-wise, this is terrible. Because yeah, like we just don't have good damage into it. Even Groudon are restricted. Our best bet is Rock Tomb here, right? So at least we have that, but I have to avoid a burn, which is the scary thing. Okay. They don't have great damage on a Guzzlord. Heatran's okay. I guess the thing about Heatran is it does wall the Ho-Oh pretty darn well. I just don't know if I really want to bring Shedinja here. Just doesn't make too much sense to me, but it does wall a couple of things. I think Zapdos is going to be really critical here, especially with Goggles. I'm thinking it's just Zapdos, Guzzlord, Heatran, and Groudon. Kind of like the Zapdos Guzzlord lead again, honestly. Okay, let's go for that. I would think a little bit hard about bringing Whimsicott if they didn't have Ho-Oh, because it has super effective damage into 3 of my opponent's mons, but Ho-Oh's very likely going to come out early on in this match, and I just it's really tough to position around it. And yeah, I mean, Shedinja here is just so weak into Ho-Oh, and earlier I was talking about how the tough thing around playing around Shedinja is you rarely have a safe option into it. Well, with Ho-Oh, you're always going to be going for Sacred Fire or Brave Bird, unless you're healing. Or I should say, you're always going for Sacred Fire or Brave Bird if you're offensive. There are obviously some more niche offensive attacks, but generally those are just by far the strongest. One thing that can be really critical here is if we get a paralysis onto the Ho-Oh early on, because what I can do turn 1 is pivot Guzzlord out into Groudon and just discharge. I could also just protect Guzzlord and discharge. I think that also works here. We also have Weather Ball, so like one play I could make here is to snipe the Scizor, but I don't think I'm worried about Scizor at all. That thing does not put on any, like, in fact, we want Scizor to be out on the field right now, because this thing does nothing against us. So the play I kind of lean towards is just discharge turn 1 and then protect. I guess I do risk like weakness policy Ho-Oh here a little bit. They switch Ho-Oh out, that's fine. Into Krookodile actually, okay, cool. Forcing Ho-Oh out is good, although now it's like, man, if I had switched into Groudon and gone for Weather Ball turn 1, that would have been a really fancy play, right? But that's okay. Mainly want to see what Scizor goes for here, honestly. Okay, it's not a priority bullet punch. We'll get discharge off. Gonna do a slight amount of damage here, but gives us a parry chance, which is the better part of it. And they're actually gonna U-turn out into Guzzlord. Okay, I'm okay with that then. Given that, I think here I'm willing to. The thing is, I'm just a little bit nervous about setting up the Sun because as soon as I bring Groudon out, I'm gonna struggle in taking attack. Oh, okay. I guess the good thing is that Heatran does completely wall Scizor and Ho-Oh, so maybe we want to focus our efforts on Krookodile right now. What I could go for is a Volt Switch onto the Scizor. I just have no damage with this thing. Okay, Volt Switch into Scizor, knock off into Krookodile to remove its item seems okay here. We might take a bunch of damage on the... Okay, and they're going to go for Rock Slide, so it should be Choice Scarf there then. It's good to know. Not surprising. No flinch there on Zapdos, so that's pretty fortunate. Gonna get Volt Switch off. Like I said, I'm pretty sure you're Scarf because we're near max speed on Zapdos, so I'm actually gonna bring in the Heatran here because yeah, I'm not at risk of. And now I can Wide Guard with Guzzlord too, which is pretty neat. So it's like if they go out into Ho, I can just go for Wide Guard and substitute. Yeah, there's U-turn. That's actually a ton of damage. That might be Choice Banded? I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it wasn't the correct decision to just let Guzzlord take that, because we knew it was coming our way. That's okay. Oh, actually, by going for knockoff, I get rid of Scarf on Krookodile. So that was, I don't know if I love that then. Now I do have Wide Guard. So then the question is if they predict the Wide Guard. Yeah, that actually might have been questionable. Because Scarf is so likely on Krookodile, it's by far the most common item I've seen so far. Okay. I mean, I could have just swapped Guzzlord out into Heatran. That is a little risky, since Krookodile could actually... Oh, okay, they bring in Mienshao. So we know all of our opponent's Pokemon here. Knockoff is not going to be great. Yeah, it was Scarfed. No surprise. Okay. Might have to give up Guzzlord here as much as that pains me. A double protect here is fine, and then it's... No, I don't... They're going to go for single target type attacks. I think we aim for the free switching right now. So I'll go for protect, and... The only thing here is I can't heal up with Zapdos, and my damage into Krookodile is really lacking with what I brought. I needed Whimsicott for Krookodile. But Whimsicott really struggles against Scizor and Ho-Oh, which is why I didn't want to bring it. Didn't feel safe with it. Okay, I'm going to protect and switch out. It's a fairly obvious play, and without Roost on Zapdos, I don't love this, to be honest. So I think the knockoff into Krookodile to remove its item is actually a misplay here, because we want it to be locked into Scarf, and Scarf Rock Slide, that was fairly obvious. It's like, even if they weren't... Okay, so we go for Fake On into Zapdos, that's fine. High horsepower, okay, yeah. Good to confirm that they have that. Yeah, I'm just really struggling to see how I deal damage into Krookodile right now, and that's the main problem for me. But I'm going to swap Heatran out into Guzzlord here, and then go for a Volt Switch here onto Mienshao. Hoping to bait out close combat into the Heatran slot, then you get the special defense drop. I drop Mienshao down. The thing is, if we eliminate Mienshao, Groudon's damage output is still really good. It'll one-shot the Krookodile probably, as well as the Scizor, and I have Rock Tomb for Ho-Oh. The only scary thing is now... I've been trying to play around getting burnt by Sacred Fire this whole game, but they've conserved their Ho-Oh super well from the start of the match. So let's see. Okay, they're actually going to offer a knockoff here. That allows us to survive. That's a big static, actually, because that means I'm going to stick around for longer, and now I outpace you with Zapdos. My main question is how fast their Ho-Oh is. Rock Slide coming out here seems likely. I'm just double checking our speed here. 112. Yeah, we should outspeed now at this point. I think I'm willing to go into Groudon first, because now with Groudon, I just actually finally have an offensive threat into the Krookodile with Heat Crash into that slot. Your best switch in would be to go out into Ho-Oh. So next turn is interesting. I could just read the switch and go for a... First of all, let's see what they go for. Okay, it's just high horsepower into the Heatran slot. Okay, so Guzzlord actually takes that. I'm not sure I wanted Guzzlord to take that, though. I would have preferred a free switch in there. So now if you're my opponent, you could switch Krookodile out into Ho-Oh, and if I call that correctly, it's kind of just a game-winning play. So I kind of want to go for it. Yeah, but I do risk taking a lot of damage. If you're my opponent, you shouldn't switch, but I don't know. The thing is, I could just Heat Crash. I'm going to go for Knockoff. I'm willing to go for it here, I think, because they would probably want to conserve Intimidate, and I don't think a lot of players respect Rock Tomb here. It's actually Mienshao switching out, though. Into Scizor, though. Okay, that's fine, I guess. And they go for Brutal Swing. Okay. I'll have revealed Rock Tomb this way, but I don't regret this play because we didn't lose that much, and had my opponent made the switch into Ho-Oh, it's like a game-winning play. So even though the turn doesn't work out like ideally for us, it's still okay. Now we drop its speed, so we outspeed with Groudon as well, so it's really fine. Because this allows me to actually get a substitute up with Heatran now. Yeah, that's actually a very big deal. And they, like, if you're my opponent, you're in a really awkward spot where it's like, do you really want to switch into Ho-Oh? I just went for a Rock Tomb into the Krookodile slot. So I'm going to go for Sub-Precipice Blades. I think we're in a really good position to go for that. And with Mienshao actually getting hit by that static, it makes the endgame a little bit easier to play. It's still going to be a difficult game to win, mainly because, like I said, Ho-Oh in general is just tough to deal damage to. But the key thing here is that Ho-Oh is going to really struggle against Heatran in the 1v1. You can recover, obviously, but at some point you're going to run out of PP for it. I just don't want to play an endgame where this game goes on for 20 minutes because I don't have damage in a Ho-Oh and Ho-Oh can't damage me, but it's looking like it might come down to that. Either way, it's interesting, like, I'm thinking how differently this game would have played out. Okay, they don't switch, so I'm just going to get the double Precipice Blades off. Doesn't KO Heatran, or sorry, Krookodile, though. Okay. That's fine, though. I'll get sub up, and then they're just going to break the sub, likely, with the high horsepower. Oh, they should go for Throat Chop. That's pretty neat, so I actually get substitute up. Now you bring in Ho-Oh if you're my opponent, and this is where things get dicey now. Because, like I said, it's all about the Sacred Fire into Groudon. What I honestly might want to do is stall out my own Sun, because if I do that, then Groudon will likely take an attack from the Ho-Oh. Sorry, I think things froze for a quick sec. Yeah, like I said, so what I want to do is stall out my own Sun, because if I stall out my own Sun, then we can survive the Sacred Fire, and then even if you burn us, if I drop the Ho-Oh speed, then I'll definitely outspeed with Groudon and Zapdos in the endgame, and they're actually going to bring Mienshao out, which I'm okay with. At this point, the main thing I want to worry about is Wide Guard, right? So here, what I don't mind going for is just Flamethrower into the Krookodile and Heat Crash into it. We know your Choice Scarf, so you can't protect. Mienshao can fake out Groudon. That would allow me to just KO Krookodile. Oh, and they actually... That's a brilliant switch by them. I think that was the one play they could have made. Is it fake out? Okay, they were paralyzed. It was presumably fake out into Groudon there. So we could have won the game with the Rock Tomb there, but I don't think I had, the willingness to actually Rock Tomb there. Heat Crash does really good damage, by the way. So maybe we actually have damage output into Ho-Oh here. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. Yeah, you have to fake out Groudon there, right? Because you can't risk switching Ho-Oh out into Krookodile, so I guess they missed a little bit of chip damage on Groudon, which could be essential. I'm just going to Flamethrower Mienshao here. The question is whether or not I want to just go for a Rock Tomb outright here. I think the answer is probably no. They're probably going to heal up with Ho-Oh, but I don't want to risk it. So I'm just going to protect. Because this actually stalls out the Sun, and that's what I was going for earlier. And the key thing here is with Substitute now, we'll be able to knock out Krookodile before it can KO us. Yep, there's Sacred Fire. Perfect. We'll KO Mienshao now. Like I said, I'm just wondering if I can avoid an endgame in which it's Heatran versus Ho-Oh. Because they actually maybe win that off of timer. Ugh, yeah, actually, I don't love that either. I honestly think what this might boil down to is whether or not my Groudon takes a Sacred Fire in Sun. Groudon's pretty bulky, so I would think it might be able to. But then the question is whether or not we get burnt. If it doesn't get burnt, we probably just win the game. Here, it feels like I need to almost switch out Groudon into Zapdos. It's just such an obvious switch. Maybe I don't. Things like Krookodile outspeeds us. If I knew I was faster with Groudon, I think we'd have this game won, but I know I'm not, so I almost feel forced to switch. Flamethrower to KO Krookodile, and then switch Groudon out as Zapdos. This is just such an obvious switch, so like they're probably just going to predict it, but even then, I mean, you do have to, if they actually didn't predict it here, would it matter? It's going to be Chop into that slot. Senai comes out again, but it's actually irrelevant here. Oh, I guess what could be interesting is they launch Sacred Fire into that slot, and that goes into Heatran. Yeah, because that actually is going to activate Flash Fire, which means I deal more damage now. Which is actually really important, because the other thing to note, by the way, that I didn't even talk about is in the Ho-Oh versus Heatran interaction, if Ho-Oh is... Oh, actually, it's going to be a Recover. It's not going to be Roost. I was gonna say, if you Roost, then you get rid of your typing, but it's a really big deal. Like, they were obviously doubling up onto Groudon there, but as a result, now I actually deal more damage. Like, I'm getting +1 flamethrowers into the Ho-Oh slot, which is really critical. Me protecting with Groudon here is relatively obvious. I might still just go for it, because if they mindlessly go for Sacred Fire, Flamethrower at this point might be a 2-hit KO with the Sun and the Flash Fire. And even if they go for the recovery move, like, that's a good play on their end, it's fine. And like I said, we might even survive the Sacred Fire, and if we do, then I think we should win if Rock Tomb hits, because then we'll outspeed with the Heatran. Nicely done. Good recover on their end. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it was correct to just Rock Tomb there if I'm expecting to survive, but now it's like, okay, I just don't know if Groudon survives Sacred Fire. I don't know how much offense this Ho-Oh has. Great damage from Flamethrower, but the problem is we don't really have that much PP, and we're not PP max on Flamethrower here. That actually might punish us in the end. So let's see if the Ho-Oh can one-shot Groudon, whether or not it can get a burn. If not, we should just... Wait. Oh, it's just slower. So the Ho-Oh is definitely not max speed then. Okay. So it probably doesn't have any bulk. Not what I was expecting. That was kind of anticlimactic in the end, but that, obviously I'm very happy about that because it meant we didn't have to play against this, you know, worrying about getting burnt by Sacred Fire. But yeah, that's not how I expected things to play out. Now, that makes some sense. I'm actually going to check Picolytics real quick on Ho-Oh's bulk. Or like the EV spread, but, you know, Ho-Oh does like having a lot of bulk. It's like on Picolytics, careful 68 speed EVs is the most common, admin 76, careful 4, careful 12. Yeah, it's actually very rare for Ho-Oh to run a lot of speed investment, but that makes it nice because yeah, if Ho-Oh were faster than Groudon, that would have been a completely different game. So that was a pretty scary matchup. We did get a little bit lucky with that paralysis on Mienshao, made the game a little bit easier to play as well. So like I said, the matchup looked kind of bad in team preview, but in the end we were actually able to win. So that's why you should never give up, even if it does look like kind of a sloppy matchup. You just have to play it well. But my opponent made some really cool plays. I love Scizor, so it was really cool to see them bring that out. Ultimately, it was just the Ho-Oh couldn't actually do anything because it didn't outspeed the Groudon. So it was nice to be surprised by that in the end, but you shouldn't typically expect that. So the other calc I want to do real quick is how much Sacred Fire does in the Sun. So let me pull that up real quick. You look at the calc here with Sacred Fire. If it's max attack in the Sun, it does KO Groudon from that range, guaranteed. But there are a bunch of different Ho-Oh spreads that are common. Right now I have Picolytics pulled up, as you can see, and these are the most common EV spreads. So, for example, if it's Careful 108, let's see, Careful 108, Sacred Fire is not a KO there in the Sun. And I think in this position, even if you hit the Sacred Fire and you burn us, we still win the game because then I still do enough damage with Rock Tomb and Flamethrower where another Flamethrower should KO the subsequent turn. If you're admin with 172, that's obviously going to do substantially more. Look at that roll, 49 to 58%, or yeah, 57, 58%. And Groudon was at around like 50+%, and so it's a damage roll. So it really basically comes down to the Ho-Oh spread. But the reality is that we probably should have gotten hit by a Fake Out by that Mienshao, and the only reason we didn't was because they got fully paralyzed that turn. So, like, I'm trying to think, okay, if you eliminate all the good luck and the RNG that we had in this game, how did the matchup look? And realistically, I don't know, it was already going to be a pretty difficult game to win. You should assume Ho-Oh's faster until you see otherwise, but I think we can't really afford to bring Whimsicott or Shedinja in this game because we need to try to make some switches in and out to balance the game a little bit more. So yeah, I'm fine with how it played out, but I don't know. It was always going to be difficult. It's a really big deal that Ho-Oh was slower than us, and I think if they are fast Ho-Oh that outspeeds Groudon, we have to try to either hope to play around and, you know, deny them a burn, or sorry, don't give them a chance to burn, or just hope that at some point they don't burn. But I guess one thing that was really critical was Heatran being able to, you know, get that Flash Fire boost as well. Turn 1 was a really good play on there, and honestly, if I, you know, had just switched Guzzlord into Groudon and just gone Weather Ball into Scizor, that like eliminates a free switch in for them and then just like accelerates the game rapidly. So because it's a tough matchup, like maybe I need to be playing more aggressively like that, since that's a relatively difficult play to cover for, and it's relatively unlikely a Ho is going to stay in against a Zapdos. So like I could have just had a very quick 4-3 lead in this match that makes it tougher for my opponent to pivot their Pokemon in and out. So that's one way we could have improved our play. But yeah, glad to get a win there since that was a difficult matchup. In the end, like I said, the paralysis on Mienshao made things easier, and then the fact that they're actually slow with Ho and Groudon outsped it made it a lot easier for us. So yeah, let's just look for another one. All right, final match of the day, and let's see what we got. Been having a lot of fun with this team so far, so it's been a blast. And they're gonna have Kyogre. Okay. Incin, Mimikyu, Volk are all going to have super effective attacks into Shedinja. Shedinja's obviously quite good into the Kyogre plus the Ludicolo combo. Still like Guzzlord here, but the Mimikyu makes it a lot tougher. This could be a game for Whimsicott solely for Grass Knot into Kyogre, honestly. If I'm my opponent, what would I bring? I was thinking about leading Groudon outright too. I know that seems a little bit wild, but I think it could make some sense. Heatran's definitely out of the question. Life Orb Grass Knot here is really tempting, honestly. But, I don't know. I'd only be bringing Whimsicott for Kyogre. I don't even think Kyogre's that big of a threat with us having Zapdos, Guzzlord, and Shedinja. So, I think what I like is Zapdos plus Guzzlord. I can protect Discharge turn 1 and then Groudon Shedinja in the back. Yeah, just with another rain matchup, Heatran doesn't make very much sense, and I just don't think Whimsicott's super strong here as well. So, let's see. Either way, should be pretty interesting. Mimikyu is scary. It gets access to Shadow Sneak as well, and it's actually a pretty cool. Like, we just used it obviously as a Trick Room setter, but it doesn't necessarily, like, it can be good offensively as well, right? Matches up pretty well into Calyrex Shadow Rider. We're gonna go with Volk plus Ludicolo. So I do definitely have to respect turn 1 Fake Out into Quiver Dance, so I kind of like Snarl turn 1. I know going for Discharge is risky because I can paralyze Guzzlord here, but I think it's worth it because it's just good damage and a double para chance onto their side. So I'm willing to just go for Discharge turn 1 and a Snarl. Snarl is just once again so good into my opponent's entire team composition. So I think I'm down for that. I'm gonna go for Fake Out. Yep, okay. The thing here is, like, my opponent can only Fake Out 1 of 2 Pokemon, right? Yeah, there's Quiver Dance. I mean, Quiver Dance is scary, but by bringing down your special attack, you're not threatening with too much offense. It's just that you get bulkier and bulkier as time goes on, but I think I'm okay with that. I think this next turn I want to go for Protect Discharge. The thing is, if we get a Paralysis on Volcarona at any point in the game, we're in really good shape. I don't know, how many Volcaronas are even running Bug Buzz? If it's not running Bug Buzz, like, maybe I just keep Snarling here. The thing is that I could also very easily pivot Guzzlord out into Shedinja right now, but then Shedinja is just in kind of a weird spot. So, okay. I think I'm willing to go for Discharge and Snarl. It's a little bit risky because I do inflict damage and potential paralysis. Okay, they actually have Bug Buzz, wow. So, they're actually going to get really good damage there onto Guzzlord. That's okay. I feel like I probably haven't used Guzzlord super well in this while playing with this team because I just keep letting it like take these bug type attacks. Like, unfortunately for us, we've actually run into pretty strong bug type Pokemon, but that's okay. And we actually do get the paralysis on Volcarona. I have to say that's one thing that's really nice about this team. It's pretty bulky, right? So you're gonna actually stay on the field for quite a while, meaning that you know, Discharge is already a pretty good paralysis chance, and we're using on 2 different Pokemon. Obviously, the odds of para at least 1 Pokemon is pretty darn good. And then when you account for the fact that the Zapdos is bulky and just stays out on the field for a long time, it's even better. So, yeah. Really good position for us now, where they just don't threaten with very much damage. Still have to worry about the Kyogre sweep in the end game, but the thing is, Volcarona is one of the primary threats to that Mimikyu, so doing damage to it this early on is a pretty good start. Icy win from Ludi, pretty interesting there. Guess it shouldn't be super surprising. Honestly, here, I think I'm willing to just go for a Discharge and a Protect. It's a fairly obvious play, but with Volcarona revealing Bug Buzz, it should be Quiver Dance, Bug Buzz, Fire-type attack, and then Protect. That would be my best bet. Maybe Rage Powder over Protect. But regardless, what this means is we're in a position now where we outspeed the Volcarona with Zapdos. And potentially Groudon later on in the game. And they're at -1, so they don't threaten with that much damage. But what I don't want to do is just switch in Shedinja, because once again, Shedinja in itself is a win condition against Ludicolo and Kyogre at this point in the matchup. So, gonna go for that Protect with Guzzlord. Let's see what they go for. Okay, just an Icy win. That's fine. That does drop our speed once again, and so Volt can actually outspeed us now. So, could have gone for a Wide Guard. Maybe they go for a Fire-type attack here into Zapdos. It's not really that scary, though. Yeah, just another Bug Buzz. Okay. The thing is, now the Shedinja switch it is super duper obvious, so I'm wondering if they read into that. This is the slightly awkward thing about the team, where, like, I just don't do that much damage across the board right now, right? But they don't do much to us as well, so it's like, yeah, we get lucky, get another paralysis there on Ludi, which is really sweet. Maybe it's okay to switch in Shedinja here because we have the Focus Sash, so it's like, even if you predict the switch in and you Flamethrower here, it's fine. I would Flamethrower Guzzlord in this position, truth be told. Maybe we just sack Guzzlord, actually. Like, if you look at why I had Guzzlord in this game, it's actually the best 2 Pokemon to go up against are Ludicolo and Volcarona for us. Yeah, actually, I'm fine sacking Guzzlord here, so I'm going to go for another Discharge and then just knock off here, I think. And I'd rather... What would I rather get rid of? Probably Volcarona, because that just has damage into Shedinja. Okay, they switch Ludi out. That should be their 4th then. You're not going to bring Kyogre here. Yeah, it's Ferrothorn. And they do get paralyzed on Volcarona. So we've been really lucky this game just in terms of rolls. Okay, a little bit of chip onto Ferrothorn. No para there. Guzzlord does get the knockoff. Importantly, we don't get paralyzed with Guzzlord, and that's actually almost going to knock out Volcarona. It hangs on with 1 HP, but I'm fine with that. Pasho Berry. Okay, that's interesting. That definitely helps out against Volcarona. Sorry, against Urshifu Water, because then, like, you can take more hits, and then with Flame Body, it's just increased chances of burns, right? Which is really nice. Because we have Weather Ball here, I think we just go for it. And just eliminate the Ferrothorn immediately. So I'm down to just Weather Ball and switch into Groudon. You're not really putting on offensive pressure with Volcarona right now. And because Volcarona is at 1 HP, Shedinja's in an amazing endgame win con. Oh, I guess the one thing about Shedinja is I think Shadow Sneak is a contact move, and so we can get burnt by Shadow Sneaking onto it, which makes me a little bit nervous. But this is the beauty of Weather Ball, right? Like, we can potentially just snipe off Ferrothorn. If they protect Ferrothorn, that's a really good play by them, but even if so, they're still in an awkward spot going into the next turn. Volt gets paralyzed again, unfortunately, but Flamethrower isn't KOing Zapdos there anyway, and I would guess they were targeting Guzzlord. Either way, though, yeah, if they actually went for Flamethrower and like got a critical hit onto Zapdos, that would be game-changing, but we've been very lucky this game with Paras. But that's the thing, right? My opponent hasn't threatened Zapdos with damage yet. They never brought out that Kyogre. So it's like, if you're going to play passively, then you can get punished by, you know, potential paralysis from Discharge. Now is where the game gets a little bit interesting, because they do get that free switch into Kyogre. So Kyogre's finally out on the field. Flamethrower or Water Spot into Groudon's pretty safe, but I think what we do here is just protect Zapdos. And then sacrifice the Guzzlord. Guzzlord's done everything I've needed it to do in this game. And at this point, if Shedinja avoids a Shadow Sneak burn, I think Shadow Sneak is contact. I'm not 100% sure on that. Ideally, at this point, we just knock out Volcarona, because if Volcarona faints, Zapdos should just win the game. But I'm just trying to think of how I can play around Scarf Kyogre plus Flame Body burning us on the Shedinja. Either way, Spout's going to come out. It's going to knock us out. Maybe it's appropriate to actually just go into Groudon right now, I think. Because we win the Weather War, and you're not going to KO us. Okay, so it's Heat Wave, yeah. Yeah, I honestly think the play is to go into Groudon here. Once again, one of the, like, if Volcarona faints, the game's over. Shedinja should win. And I just... want to, like, Groudon isn't in that much, I don't know, Water Spout is still scary from Zapdos, I suppose, but it's not going to KO us, and because we have the para to work with on the Volcarona here, like, I think it's fine to just go for Volt Switch onto Kyogre. I mean, I feel like I maybe should Precipice Blades here. I just risk missing onto Volcarona, whereas, like, he crashes 100% accurate. But here I maybe do want to cover and actually get damage off. So, okay, I'm going to go for Volt Switch and Precipice Blades, because it's guaranteed damage into Kyogre or the Ludicolo switch in here. If Volk doesn't protect and we hit Precipice Blades, the game should just be over. Okay, so they do actually have protect, but now Ludicolo faints. I get Shedinja for free, and now this means even if Shadow Sneak burns, we get burned by Shadow Sneak, we should still win the match. Because, no, I was going to say you could go for a double protect. No, that's fine. But I have to, of course, acknowledge that we got lucky in this game getting paras on both Volcarona and Ludicolo. But once again, when you're going for Discharge consistently over 3 to 4 turns, and my opponent isn't switching out, yeah, it's tough for them to do much. Given that they were Heat Wave instead of Flamethrower or Overheat there, they would have needed a critical hit onto Zapdos the turn that they attacked with Heat Wave to change the outcome of this game. Like, in terms of the actual play. Of course, like, once again, like, the mental factor is a big thing to consider, where, you know, we've gotten pretty lucky, and my opponent might just, you know, not be playing optimally because we've had our fair share of good luck. That's always a factor that you don't see as much. That you don't talk about as much, but is a very realistic part of the game, right? So I'm willing to just Shadow Sneak Volcarona now and switch Groudon out into Zapdos. Actually, no, the play was to protect the Groudon here instead of switching. Yeah, that might actually cost us if... We'll see what this boils down to. It was definitely to protect Groudon there. That was actually a very big misplay on my end. Okay, we don't get burnt, though. I'm going to double check if Shadow Sneak's a contact move, but... pretty sure it is. Yeah, it does make contact. Okay. The reason that was a misplay was because if I get burnt there, then the endgame is just Groudon versus Kyogre, and I have the weather up, but they will just have Water Spout. So then it comes down to the Kyogre spread. But the single target Water Spout in Sun still demolishes Groudon. It doesn't KO us, but Precipice Blades isn't one-shotting them in return. Now, this Groudon is pretty bulky. It is careful, if I remember correctly. 236 HP, 140 special defense. Precipice Blade should be a 2-hit KO, but there's no reason to not protect the Groudon there. Because, oh, actually, though, if I protect Groudon and I get burnt, I lose the game anyway. All right? So that's what it boils down to, whether or not Flame Body comes out. Yeah, because if I protect Groudon there, I get burnt, then it's Zapdos plus Groudon. Well, I guess then there's a chance that Zapdos outspeeds Kyogre, because we never found out Kyogre's item. It's probably Choice Scarf on this team comp. And then that way I actually just don't have the Weather War, and I'd actually would just lose outright. So maybe the Groudon switching was actually correct. It comes down to the Kyogre item, but I was never able to confirm that in this match. Yeah. I was never able to confirm that in this match. So, I don't know. Was it correct to switch out into Groudon? The other question is there any way I can play in which I don't have to rely on Shadow Sneaking Volcarona? But I don't think I can. Because, if I switched out and didn't Shadow... I could have switched out and protected with Zapdos. Maybe that's the... Oh, sorry. Or protect with Shedinja. No, but then the thing is Volcarona can protect in subsequent turns, and, like, I don't want to deal with that, right? Because as soon as Volcarona doesn't have protect, or has protected the previous turn, we can fully leverage that towards our advantage. So, yeah. I don't know. That was definitely an interesting one. And you can see it. Like, we ran into pretty favorable matchups today. 2 Kyogre teams. Like, this team does really well into Kyogre, I'd say. Obviously, Groudon versus Kyogre is a little bit awkward, but Guzzlord, Shedinja, and Zapdos are all really good into rain teams. This game highlighted the value of Discharge. Not a move you see that often in VGC, but pairs really nicely on this team because you have Groudon and Shedinja. The whole matchup was really tricky, but it was a big deal because they were slower than us. If they were faster, that'd play out very differently. And then Calyrex Shadow Rider. Yeah, that game, I don't know. I feel like it was mainly just the strength of the Heatran early on, dealing lots of damage with Heat Wave across the board, and my opponent not being able to, like, one-shot things. And Heatran plus Groudon is just really strong when you're in the sun, and your opponent doesn't have weather control. Weather control is pretty hard in this format if you're not running Kyogre or Groudon. Yeah, Alolan Ninetales is actually popping up, specifically one to deal as a way to control the weather, and two for just icy wind support and like, you know, screen support as well. But generally it's pretty tough to manage the weather on your own end. So you can see how good this team is. I got destroyed by it a couple of days ago, and it's once again, it's just the Shedinja in itself putting on so much pressure and bluffing Alice, which that makes things even trickier. So really fun episode. I'm looking forward to playing a couple more games with it today. So thanks so much as always for watching. Thanks to the original creator for the team. Details in the description below. Leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll see you all soon. All right, peace.